Hello, everybody. I'm Alex.
And I'm Brennan. And today we'll be discussing the canonicity of the Lost Worlds, which were expanded universe stories that were canceled before they were published in primarily the 80s and 90s that since got published online.
Yes, one of the biggest things that happened in the last couple years that got released was the Heart of the Jedi. You want to talk about that a bit, Brennan?
Yeah, we can talk a bit about that one. That's probably the biggest one that we got, the first biggest one, I should say. I think 2014, if I remember correctly, is when the files got released online, and that's of The Heart of the Jedi by Kenneth C. Flint. This was intended to be published by Bantam, um, but Trucip Bakura got published instead of it for whatever reason. But then it got published online, and now we're able to read it in full. We've even been able to get copies of it because of the Amazon bootleg situation. So, Heart of the Jedi can be read, it can be enjoyed. It doesn't contradict anything really in the EU. Does it do a lot? No, it's a fine story. It
Mm-hmm.
it's good, but it's not amazing. It's nothing hugely notable, but at the same time, it doesn't break continuity. Now, I've seen a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people say that these unpublished stories are pretty much just fan fiction. And to me, I'm like, what? How is it fan fiction? Fan fiction is written by just a random fan, like
Yeah.
Hand of Thrawn. It's just a random fan. This was approved, and it was
Mhm.
going to be published, right?
Yeah, it wasn't not allowed because of continuity errors or some sort of issue with the story. It was simply business stuff behind the scenes that chose Bakura over that book.
Exactly. And so at one point it was, you know, requested. It was paid for. It was
Mm-hmm.
approved. It was going to be published by the company. To me that is there is a marked difference between fan fiction and these unpublished stories. That seems so
Exactly.
much closer to official than to not. And since there's no continuity issues, I really don't see any reason why you can't include Heart of the Jedi in the EU canon. Do you agree, Alex?
I agree absolutely with everything you said. I've basically nothing further to add. All I'll say is that Joe Bongiorno went back and kind of, I don't know if he just edited it or talked to Kenneth C. Flint, but some things were slightly edited. So we got like mentions of the Shido from the Galaxy of Fear series. We got mentions of Claudites, which obviously would have been there originally because it was 95 when the book was supposed to come out. So we got slight prequel connections there and stuff to make it help actually flow better with the continuity than it would have before. But regardless, there's nothing in the main story that's contradictory, and everything you said is spot on.
Yeah, and those little tweaks just make it fit even better, if anything. And since the author is still involved, I don't think tweaking a manuscript slightly to like add something minuscule in or tweak something to remove something that could have been problematic makes it any less canon or makes it more fan fiction.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
still largely it would have been official EU. And something else to talk about is the adventure journals,
Right.
because Adventure Journal 16 to 18 had some short stories in it
Mm-hmm.
that were going to be published. For example, Light and Shadow from the Tales of the Jedi era.
Right.
Um, these stories were going to be published in Adventure Journals number 16 to 18, but Adventure Journals were canceled after number 15. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Again, with Heart of the Jedi, these fit in continuity.
Mm-hmm.
These were intended for publication. They just
Yeah.
unfortunately never were. I don't see any reason why these can't be included. There's no continuity errors. They were intended for publication. These aren't fan fiction. These were at one point officially approved EU stories. Do you agree again there with these adventure journals?
Yeah. I'm basically on the same page with you here. I think we are, with the most part, on everything. There's some pushback as we get to a separate thing that hasn't come out yet at the time of recording this. That I'm on the same page as you, but other people may have fair enough points knocking it, but we'll get to that. But overall, with the adventure journals and Heart of the Jedi, I see it as absolutely canon to the EU, and there's no reason not to accept it.
So yeah, there's those short stories. There's that book, and then there's also a novella, Lightsider. Are we on
Right.
the same page about Lightsider?
Yeah, because it was already made by Tom Veitch back in the day. The only reason it didn't get released is because, again, behind the scene problems with Veitch and Lucasfilm. So if it wasn't for that, it would have been a thing.
Yeah, that falling out prevented it from coming to fruition there. But now we have it, and it's fantastic. Lightsider's pretty great.
And it helps explain a huge like hole in Dark Empire 2 because he just shows up. Freaking Cam Salazar is just there. And we have, and Luke's like, oh yeah, I picked him up earlier. It's just so jarring to go from Dark Empire 1 to 2, and he's just a part of it. But now with Lightsider, you have a smooth transition from Dark Empire 1 to 2.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And if anything, it helps the continuity to include. And it's not like it's including fan fiction to help stop a problem. Like Hand of Thrawn has several fan fictions where he tries to explain some like problems, tie up some loose ends. But this is different because it was an official author through Lucasfilm trying to get it out, and to not include it now that we do have it, like you said with Cam Solusar, it makes more sense to include it because it explains why he's suddenly there.
Yeah. And like again, it would have been released. It would have been something we would have saw had Tom Veach not had the issues that he had. That's all behind the scenes stuff with people. That has nothing to do with the story itself.
Yeah, for sure. Good point. Now, something that's kind of similar to this, when talking about these kind of lost world stories, is the translations of stories. Oh, I forgot one unpublished thing before we got to the translations. That's on me. There's Skywalkers by Abel G. Pena. I assume we both are of the same opinion here, that it's part of the EU.
Absolutely.
And I'd say Skywalkers is probably even more so than Heart of the Jedi, because if I remember correctly, a link to its PDF was published on StarWars.com or an official Star Wars blog site. So, like, I think it's even more official.
Right. That one specifically it was being worked on before the buyout. The buyout happened. He was still working on it. So the Star Wars people were like, "Well, yeah, you could put it up on the website because you worked on it and we paid you to do it, so you can release it still." And then it got released online. As you said, I think it was on the Star Wars website. We could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure you're correct about that. So, unlike the other ones, I think that one's even more case for being official.
Yeah, definitely. Exactly what you said is what I agree with. So we can move on to talk about some of the translations, which would include the My Comics, which were Ewoks and Droids short comics released in Spain that were translated by Abel G. Pena, and I believe released on StarWars.com. And then you have the Hungarian Han Solo novels, which we've gotten to read the first one, which was released as a PDF.
So the Hungarian novels are a bit trickier because of the loophole they kind of did, because they were given permission by Lucasfilm to, release books and translate them, I believe, right, to Hungarian. However, they just went ahead and wrote entirely new stories, which wasn't exactly a part of what they were told they were allowed to do. They were licensed and approved by Lucasfilm to do something, but not the thing that they were doing. But that being said, I don't know about all the stories because not all of them have been translated. But as for the one that's out there, there's nothing really contradictory about it. If anything, it just feels like another adventure with Han Solo, like the Brian Daley books.
Yeah, for sure. I thought the first one was really good. No continuity issues. Seems to flow well enough. The only problem with those is, like you said, the company in Hungary, I'm not sure why I said Hungary. The company in Hungary had the rights to publish Star Wars material, had the right to publish translated material, but they still had the rights for publishing all Star Wars books in Hungary. So they took advantage of that with that kind of loophole and wrote books that weren't commissioned by Lucasfilm. But the publication studio did have the rights to publish Star Wars stuff. So it's technically kind of licensed, which just leaves it at this gray area. It wasn't approved, but it was licensed,
See, this is one where I can understand someone being like, the other ones I'm like, I don't think, the other stuff we've discussed thus far, I feel like people can argue that it's not, but I feel like they're just factually incorrect. With the Hungarian ones, I'm more of a, I completely understand if you don't accept it as canon to the EU. I'm willing to accept it as canon, but I think you completely have a fair basis if you believe it's not with the Hungarian ones.
Okay, interesting, because I I was gonna say, since they were published and the company had the license, it feels almost a higher level to me than stuff like Lightsider or Heart of the Jedi or Adventures in Hyperspace: The Big Switch, which was the Ryder Wyndham Young Readers novel, which was another unpublished story we didn't touch on yet.
I'm pretty much on the same page as you with the Hungarian novels. I agree. I think they are canon for the reasons you mentioned. I'm just saying because of the gray area that it resides in, because of the kind of weird way about of how these got made, I am completely willing, if somebody says I don't accept it, to be like, that's a fair take. Whereas with the other ones, I feel like they're wrong for thinking so objectively. This one, I'm like, well, because it's so subtly with how it got around to being this way, I completely see where somebody's coming from if they have issues with it. But I personally accept it because of all the reasons you mentioned.
Definitely, fair enough. And what about the My Comic stories? For me, since those were Spanish Ewoks and Droid stories and they got translated to English and published on StarWars.com, I really don't see why anyone could say they're not canon to the EU. There was literally an article about it on StarWars.com, so I just don't see where an argument could be made to say the My Comics for the short Droids and Ewoks comics translations aren't EU canon. I just don't see how an argument can be made. What do you think?
I same thing as you. I got nothing further to add there.
And I briefly mentioned the Adventures in Journal. The Adventures in Journal. Geez, my mind is my mind's going crazy now. Adventures in Hyperspace: The Big Switch by Ryder Wyndham. Same thing.
Right.
We think that's EU canon.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So there's been several stories, and maybe will we touch a bit on supernatural encounters here, or could we make a whole separate video about that?
I think we can address it here, and then when it comes out, maybe address it again, because I know that's a hot topic, at least at the time of recording this with some people I've seen online.
Yeah, and I'll just say, if you want to see my thoughts on a podcast on the expandeduniverse.com, I'm not sure if I'm able to plug my YouTube channel, but I'm going to. I made a 37-minute video in defense of supernatural encounters and why it's canon to the EU. So if you want my thoughts, go over there and you can listen to that. I researched it really hard and put all my effort into that video. So instead of reiterating it here, I'll just let Alex touch on supernatural encounters. And I will tease that Joe Bongiorno said that he would do an interview with us for this podcast about
What?
after Supernatural Encounters comes out.
I'm learning something new,
did
folks.
you not know that?
I was not aware of this. No, I don't remember you saying this. Maybe you did, but I don't remember. Did you? I don't remember. I don't remember this at all.
I think I sent it to you.
Okay, well, it slipped my mind. Anyway, well, geez, guys, you excited about that one? That'll be a future episode. Get ready for that one. This could be epic.
Alex is excited for it too now.
Yeah, I'm pumped. Whoa, insane in the membrane. Got no brain. Anyway, so supernatural encounters. So the whole big shebang with this. This man, Joe Bongiorno, has been working on this for many years now. Okay, and a lot of people I've seen online, whether it be Discord, Reddit, or other places, seem to have issues with it for a variety of reasons. One, because it's taken so long, and because of the controversy of some Disney elements being brought into it, which I have the opinion of I'm going to hold my tongue on that, so I'll actually read it and see how it's implemented before I judge it. Though I trust your video, and I trust the people like Matt Wilkins and what other people that I trust have said that it's going to be fine. But I'll wait and see till I read it to make up my mind on that. But I think some of the biggest issues is that it's going to be released on the website, and it's being given to some people to help back it, a copy of the book. But it is not. Now, there are contracts and stuff, which is a whole thing that Matt Wilkins and you have gotten into about how this is official. But I do see some arguments made about the whole fact that it's, in a sense, fan fiction, which I find very annoying. But I can kind of see the mindset of where people are coming from with that. And so it's a very controversial topic right now within EU circles when this topic of supernatural encounters gets brought up. where you got half the side being like, no, it's totally canon. We've already discussed this. He has he has the paperwork and everything. And then you have other people arguing that it's not for this and that reason that we can probably get into in another episode. But I do think it's interesting that this of all things is so controversial within the EU community right now.
Interesting indeed. And I will say, with your takes there on supernatural encounters, I completely see all of your points there about it. It's just it's going to be a touchy subject for a while in the fandom, I do believe. But I think we've covered almost all, if not all, of the unpublished media and the foreign media that's getting translated to English. See ya. This was a fun topic. See you next time.
Bye-bye, everybody.